So we just have somebody posted in the question and answering that there is no sound. Does anybody hear us? Can somebody respond if they hear us? Okay, great, thanks. So it just must be one anomaly here for sound. So hopefully you can redial in and hear us if you don't have any sound. All right. Okay. So thanks you. Again, thank you everybody for joining me for API Design Essentials. I'm Laura Heritage, the Director of API Strategy here at Akana. I forgot to put my contact information on the first slide, but you can use Google. I'm available everywhere. You know, I'm easily to find and get contact with. Okay. So I'm going to start off with a few slides to give an overview of the Akana platform, and then I'm going to spend the rest of the time demoing the platform. So I'm going to spend probably about 25 minutes at the most on slides, and then 25 minutes on the demoing. And it is going to be jam-packed because I have a lot to go through, and it's exciting stuff. I really love giving these type of talks. They're like my favorite. Okay, so before we get started, if you want to play along, you can go in and sign up on the Akana platform for your own tenant, okay? And then you can use it and try out the platform later to design your APIs or design with me. So you can go there and get a tenant, all right? Okay, so to get started, I like to level set on, you know, what's really involved in establishing an API strategy. If you're in a company that's larger than, let's say, 1,000 people, there's going to be an ecosystem of teams that want to have a say in the API strategy. And in fact, when we go into customers from an Akana perspective, especially large banks or insurance companies or hospitality or airlines or whoever we're going into, we usually deal with at least these sets of teams, okay? And at any one time, these teams are in the room, ranging from the enterprise architects to the business people to the integration people, the operations, security, and the API designers. You've got all of these different teams trying to interact and devise an API strategy. And believe me, when I say every one of these teams thinks they're the most important team. So getting everybody to agree on the same page becomes more of an organizational issue than a technical issue in most instances. But a successful API strategy will support each one of these roles involved, okay? Now, if you're in a smaller organization or starting up, you might have a single person playing all of these roles, which makes it even more important that the solution and a partner that you choose to help you establish your API strategy really understands each one of these roles. For example, for the API designers, if you're coming from an API designer standpoint, you do not want to be told what tools to use. You want the flexibility to choose the tools that will help you design a proper API. You want the freedom to choose which API description language you want. Or you don't even want to have to learn an API description level specification. You want that generated for you, okay? If you're the integration developer team responsible for surfacing and making these APIs consumable, you know, you want it to be quick, right? You want quickly to transform from a system of record SOAP services to REST. You want to rapidly compose new services and make sure you can redact the data that is confidential and make sure that all works properly. From an API product manager standpoint, she wants to be able to create product offering to make sure that she can get the best value for their business. She wants to manage provisioning of services, communication with developers, really that whole business of the API. And that's what the API product manager is really concerned about. Now, I think one of the most important roles is the API security architect, right? Because everybody's secure. Scared of security. You don't want to be the next person on the news, with a security break. So these security architects need to be up to date on the latest threat protections, the modern security standards. They also need to integrate these modern standards with their legacy system standards, and they need to react to threats quickly. This is even more important that your API provider understands security and focuses on security when you don't have a single person that solely focuses on security, if you have people playing multiple roles. So that's very, very important. Next comes the operation lead, right? This guy is responsible for protecting the back-end services, enforcing SLAs set by your product manager, being able to scale globally, and being able to manage and monitor that distributed environment, right? That's what the operation lead is looking for. And then finally, in large enterprises, you have the enterprise architect, right? They are responsible for establishing the architecture for the entire enterprise for all the API strategies. If you're in a large enterprise, you're going to have several different API initiatives spinning up with different lines of business and so forth. And the enterprise architect's role is to make sure that you can put in place an architecture that can scale and that's easier to operate and that can simplify their architecture and can reduce their costs, right? Most importantly, the enterprise architectures, are supposed to ensure the compliance and the auditability of the solution. So you've got all of these players, again, that need to be, or roles that need to be addressed when establishing your API strategy, all right? So the Akana platform, when we take a look at those roles, we really cater to each one of those roles. We provide API design capabilities to let your API designer focus on how they want to design, okay? We're going to spend a lot of time in the demo with the API designer. For API security, we focus heavily on API security, okay? We leverage the latest in security standards. We are certified by third-party accredited sources to make sure everything is I'm going to say kosher with our security and top-notch so that you don't appear on the news. We have integration and mediation capabilities, so you can spin out mediations and integrations in a matter of hours and days instead of 3 to 6 month development cycle. We have traffic management capabilities for being able to monitor and alert and enforce multiple different service level agreements. We have that developer portal or community manager that allows that API product manager really to control the business of their APIs and communicate with their communities. We provide API analytics to generate deep understanding of your business. And this analytics stems from the design time phase, from an audit and compliance perspective, all the way through to the runtime. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Finally, the lifecycle management capabilities, being able to build APIs and leverage DevOps and continuous development and really hooking into all of your DevOps solutions, and we'll take a little bit closer look at that later in the presentation. And finally, for your an additional for the lifecycle management for your enterprise architect, we have several deployment options, being the cloud, being a hybrid notion, and being completely on-premise. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more again about each one of these capabilities in a few minutes. All right, but next we're going to talk about, well, how does an API management solution fit into your existing enterprise architecture? How does Akana fit into your existing enterprise architecture? This is a question I always get, okay? So, and here's how I break it down. This is a really traditional enterprise reference architecture diagram. I've simplified it quite a bit just to give you a highlight view of where it fits in. The areas in red are where the Akana platform capabilities fit in, and the areas in gray are capabilities that you already have in your reference architecture or in your architecture, okay? So the Akana gateway capabilities really fit into the interaction layer. Now, the interaction layer really is the layer that orchestrates and manages the interactions and both internally and externally with the APIs that you are building and exposing. You may have heard a term for this layer being systems of engagement, okay? This layer needs to be able to change and move. The life cycle is very fast because it needs to change with your business, right? And your business can change within a week, within 2 weeks, right? So that the ability to orchestrate and change and redact and to change your APIs to what the consumer, what your business needs to happen extremely rapidly, okay? Now, the interaction layer typically interacts with the traditional integration layer. Now, the traditional integration layer really is focused on those traditional ESB type capabilities, such as adapters and heavy message processing. And this tier usually exposes, you know, a SOAP service or REST or MQ service that can be consumed by the interaction layer. And the interaction layer actually turns those into something that a consumer would want to be able to consume, consumer in a line of business. Now, the traditional integration layer really deals with your system of record type assets, and these assets tend to move a lot slower. The life cycle is a lot slower. In fact, the traditional ESB integration layer usually takes, you know, 3 to 6 months to deploy mediation or to get it changed, because it is dealing with those system of record type things and heavy message processing and so forth, okay? Now, the interaction layer also interacts with the application layer, okay? The application layer not only provides services, right? It exposes services, again, in a REST or in a SOAP or MQ type fashion, but it also can consume. And in fact, the traditional integration layer can also consume APIs from the interaction layer, okay? So the interaction layer really does what it says. It manages the interactions between all of these different services and different layers within your organization and outside your organization. Really manages the consumption of your APIs and services, okay? So that's kind of how that layer works. Now, if we take a look over on the left-hand side where we have the management layer where the Akana capabilities reside, we have service management capabilities that will manage all of those services that are being exposed off of your traditional integration layer and application layer, and it'll put the security around it and the throttling and the management around those layers. It also provides the management around the API, the interaction layer, right? All of your APIs, again, managing the consumers, the threat protections, mediations, traffic management, do those micro orchestrations, okay? So we do the API management and the service management in that management layer. You'll also notice the hybrid cloud management layer. Because our Akana platform is a software solution and it runs the same, we run that same software solution in the cloud as on-premise. We provide management capabilities to help if you're on-premise to manage your private cloud installation of the Akana platform, and when you're running in a hybrid notion. So we help you manage and scale your solution with those capabilities. If we take a look over onto the right side of the chart, there's the analytic layer. Okay, we have a pretty robust robust and pluggable analytic layer. We will take analytics not only from, as I said earlier, from the design time, but all the way through the runtime, doing operational, consumer, and business. And we'll take this information and we can plug it into your existing BI systems, or we can take other input and create reports. So we provide a pretty robust analytics layer. Finally, the community management layer, okay? This is where we manage, just what it says, the communities, be it if it's an internal community, external community. This is where people go to find which APIs to consume, to manage their consumption of it, to communicate if there's issues or enhancements, or just communicate with the community as a whole. And this is where also the product manager establishes things like that, okay? All right. So let's go. I think that's a quick overview. I know it was pretty quick, but it'll give you an idea, and I can address questions later. Okay, so now we're going to go through just quickly through in the next, let me see, the next probably 10 minutes, the next all the capabilities I talked about before in just a little bit more detail, and then we'll jump right into the demo, okay? The first one that we're going to cover is for the API designers. We really provide a lot of flexibility and productivity for your API designer, okay? We provide a graphical API designer so that your API designer doesn't even have to care what API description language that they have, right? Our API designer has a Swagger look and feel. You can, design your APIs in detail, and we'll see that later. And you can even add additional documentation in Markdown so that you can create rich documentation. You can then, once you're done, you can export the RAML, Swagger, WSDL, or Waddle, and then use your favorite client-side or server-side code generators and IDEs to actually build out your final API. Now, let's say you've already, you want to use your own tool. Your developer, just generates the documentation from the code. Well, we can import Swagger, WSDL, RAML, and Waddle, and you can then further annotate that document in our API designer. Okay, so you can take and clean up the documentation, or even just continue working and iterating on what you want that API design to look like, and send it back to the developer. So a very robust way to manage the API design. We also, besides just the resources and stuff, very robust. We manage the JSON and XML schema models for you as well in the Akana platform, and we'll go into that, and we'll show you that later. Okay. So security. Okay, security is incredibly important. We pride ourselves on being a leader in API and service security. We secure the complete channel, everything from the end user apps, authentication and authorization, all the way through to being able to rate limiting, context filtering, threat protection, and so forth. 4 to 5 top U.S. banks leverage our security gateway for their API programs. Okay, and we keep up on we reduce your risk because we are able to apply security consistently across all of your services using a policy-driven approach. Okay, we are certified PCI DSS 3.1 Level 1 service provider. As I said before, we are routinely have third-party sources come in and accredited sources come in and certify our capabilities. We are compliant with the EU Data Protection Directive, that you can see below. I'm not going to read out the numbers. And so we can be deployed in very complex layered security environments, which typically are popular in banking scenarios. Okay. Moving on. Oh, here's a list of some of our out-of-box policy. We provide the gamut of OAuth. We can act as we have a full OAuth provider. We can be our own OAuth provider. We can leverage an external OAuth provider, which we'll see. I'll leverage Google. We can do even the traditional type of security. So we do the modern security and the traditional type of security, because a lot of our companies that we work with need to transform from an OAuth, a modern type of security, back to a SOAP WS security policies, or leveraging SAML, or doing mutual SSL authentication, plus doing all of those threat protection things like XML schema validation and so forth, and protecting against SQL injections and JavaScript injections and all that kind of good stuff. It's a lot of good box of policies that you can use out of the box, ready to go. All right, here's actually one of my favorite things. I've been an integration girl for, too many years to even imagine. I've been through it all, and I would say that our integration capabilities really do make it easy to deploy. And here's a little story. This one bank bought us for a couple of years ago, bought us for a particular API pilot project that they were doing. Okay, and I go back and periodically check on them, how their API strategy project's going. They're like, oh, good. But one time I went back, this was like over a year ago, and they were super excited. I'm like, oh, how's your API program? They're like, oh, good. But what we were able to do is leverage the gateway capabilities and create an orchestration and we deployed it in a matter of weeks, and we were able to deliver this one-and-done capability to our business and improve our customers' experience coming to the bank. And hopefully we'll see some incremental revenue on it. And they said they were able to do that, you know, because of how easy we were to do the integration, right? If they would have had to go through their traditional ESB realm, it would have taken, you know, they would have had to fit in that development cycle, which would have been, you know, about 6 months to deploy. They were able to rapidly deliver integration capabilities leveraging our gateway. Okay, so we do lots of things. We have a SOAP to REST declarative mediation out of the box, so you can take a SOAP API, put the mediation policy on it, and you'll end up with a REST API. We do, as I said earlier, with the security policies, we do that. We've got, again, declaratively, we can map, you know, your REST APIs, OAuth, to your SOAP APIs, WS security policies, and so forth. We do orchestration. We can do things like split, right? So a lot of orchestrations, when you're dealing with APIs, you need to call like 3 different APIs and gather the information to create your new one. Well, most other gateways require you to do that sequentially, right? Which takes time to wait for each one of those things to return. The Akana platform, we can do a split, call all 3 of those, and then join it back together to do transfer to make the API. So great. We have you know, transformation capabilities. Again, you can do this in a declarative model, like using, you know, XML to JSON, or we have a prescriptive model, so you can use XSLT to do your transformation, or FreeMarker. If you haven't looked at FreeMarker, it's really cool, and we have a tutorial on our GitHub repository on how to use FreeMarker in your API gateway. Very cool, very fast. Like, we did some cool performance tests on it, and it was just amazing. So I highly recommend taking a look at that. With our API gateway, you're also, when you're doing your orchestrations, you can also do scripting, and you can do that in your favorite language, be it JSON, Bean Shell, Java, or JavaScript, okay? And you can augment your policies and all your different orchestrations. So we have really cool stuff for the integration developer, all right? And let's go on to the next. Traffic shaping. Okay, we have a wide range of configurable policies for your traffic shaping, doing throttling based on bandwidth, throughput, doing concurrency. Basically, you can configure several different policies and surface those to your API product manager, and then she can, or API owner, and they can click and apply those to the APIs very easily. And we're going to go through that, and we'll do some of that later. We can do SLA reporting and enforcement. You can define, well, okay, I want to be, you can attach these policies at an API level, so it applies to the API as a whole, or you can apply them at the consumer level, so, you know, for throttling per consumer. So it's very robust on the different layers that you can apply these policies and have them take effect. The other thing for, I mean, we got a lot of things, but the other thing I wanted to mention here was the global traffic management. Being able to deploy API endpoints globally, and then using our global transaction traffic management solution to then route the traffic to the nearest endpoint. That's, you know, makes the experience of your API program that much better. Okay, productization tools, and we're going to see a lot of this in a few minutes, but we have a configurable developer portal, which you can configure and create a developer portal for each of your consumer segments, you know, internal, external, or partners. All of the developer portal capabilities. So you can use our configurable templates out of the box. We have a couple of them out of the box that you can use that are pretty robust, and you can completely change the look and feel of them. But we also have API access to all the capabilities of our developer portal. So if you want to go and just completely rebuild and do your own developer portal leveraging some of our capabilities, you can surely do that. And we have some customers that do that, okay? Here's some of the capabilities. Socialize. You've got documenting APIs. We saw that, and we're gonna go more detail in that in a minute. You can monetize the APIs with SLAs and do fine-grained scoping of the APIs. You can provision API keys. You can test in line with Swagger documentation. We enable client code generators by providing the API description languages. So you can go and download the GitHub for the latest thing that you want to generate client code for. And one of the great things about some of the capabilities of the developer portal is the search and filtering capabilities, especially if you're in a very large organization. We work with organizations that have a combination of 100 to 200 /API/services that they need to be able to organize and search and filter on to understand, how to consume. Part of this is relation to groups, right? So you want, within those large organizations, you want certain groups to have access to certain APIs and not see certain APIs. So we have very fine-grained grouping capabilities and scoping capabilities when you do that. And we also provide, boards and forums so you can talk about requirements and requests and defects and all that kind of business. Okay, insights for the product manager. I'm gonna hurry on here. So I talked about this earlier. We have a great analytic capability. It's really architected to meet the international data privacy standards, right? So we've made it so that we can be certified there. We have you can get at operational analytics, really the monitoring the performance of the API availability and so forth, and we're going to see a little bit of that. Consumer analytics track, how much each of the apps or consumers are using each API, and then down to business analytics, okay, to show you how your business is doing. Excuse me. Finally, control and auditability for your enterprise, okay? We provide lifecycle management over the complete API lifecycle from design through deployment, and we can hook up to help give you that whole DevOps automation, continuous delivery of the APIs, but yet still giving you that control that you need when you're a large enterprise and you have regulations and you have to be able to audit and understand absolutely everything that happens and how it was designed of those APIs. We provide that capability. We can hook up into GitHub, Jenkins, Jira. You can hook up into Slack and Perforce and others. Okay, so we've really streamlined that and automated the life cycle across the whole development process of the API. Scalability and deployment. We talked about this at the beginning. We offer the complete cloud-hosted environment, what you're going to see here in a minute. Hybrid, which is by far the most popular deployment of the solution, where you have all of the management capabilities in the cloud, and then you might have the gateway capabilities on-premise, or you might have it fully on-premise, or again, you have that hybrid split of both, depending on your needs, right? And this is really, again, from an enterprise architecture standpoint, when they're looking at how they can simplify their architecture, we can help them do that and see how everything fits within their existing architecture. All right. All right, that's the end of the slideshow. So now I am going to share my screen here and make sure that everything is on the right monitor at the right size. I'm going to have to make this smaller and shrink it down. Okay. There we go. Okay. I hope you all are seeing my desktop right now. Oh.
Yes, it's visible.
And I just lost There we go. All right. So if you went and signed up to have an Akana tenant, when you click on the URL to see your tenant for the first time, this is the page you're going to see, okay? Now, this is a home page. You will eventually rebrand this page to be your company's page, right? You can easily rebrand it, you know, just regular HTML and load up files. And when you're at the admin, this little icon here pops up and you can load the files there and really, really brand this to your own. When you do log in, there's a bunch of information on here that will help you get started, okay? We've got several videos from design your API to secure your API here, and these videos range from about, you know, 3 to 7 minutes, okay? So you can, you know, pick them out and see which ones, you know, that will probably help you in getting started, okay? I definitely recommend if you're designing an API from scratch, do the design API. It's going to go a lot slower than I'm going to go today for designing an API. Okay, you can even subscribe to our YouTube channel to see more of the how-to videos when working with the API platform. Today I'm logged in as the API administrator, so I'm going to be, you know, for demo's sake, be a provider and a consumer at the same time. What I'm going to show you right here is I have the Swagger. Everybody knows Swagger API, right? Everybody does it. Everybody uses it. I loaded this Swagger API into the platform by pointing to the Swagger documentation and loaded it up. I put some security policies around it, some monitoring policies around it, and we'll take a look at that a little bit later because it'll have cooler analytics because I have some traffic being shaped right now through there to make it more interesting when we look at monitoring capabilities. But to create a new API, you click on this plus and say Add New API. It walks you through a wizard. Okay, so hold on one second. I got to get my cheat sheet out here. Let me get a copy of that. Okay, so right here, I'm not going to show you the importing of the Swagger Whistle and Waddle, but it's really easy. Like I said, with the Swagger, I put the URL in there. If you want to try that with me right now, you can go ahead and do it. Just go get the URL, boom, and it'll suck it all in. Or you can do a file upload with a zip file or just pointing out the file. But we are going to create an API from scratch today, and it is going to be called account data, okay? Now, if you know your endpoint, you can put your endpoint in right now. If you don't know your endpoint, don't worry about it. You can do it later. I'm going to put it in. I created a really cheeky account data API using Node.js, and it's up on my Amazon account. So it's not super great API, but it illustrates the point. All right, so I'm going to save that. What this is doing is preparing my API design for me. The thing that you see next is our API designer. Okay, when the API designer comes up, it gives you one resource, which is basically at the root. Okay, this is if you just want to save this and try your resources from the root, and everything else will happen automatically. That's fine. But today we are not going to do that. We are going to actually put some resources in, and I'm going to delete that because I want to have it clean. So the first thing I'm going to do, before I do that, see this import DL? If we get here and decide, you know what, I do have an API description language, I can import that and precede all of my API design. And then I can continue to design after I've imported it, okay? I can also, when I'm designing, we'll be able to see our Swagger documentation. And if I wanted to, and I doubt many people will, you could edit it from there, okay? But you have a graphical designer, so you don't really need that. All right, so add resources. So my first resource I'm going to add is going to be account. I've done this before, so it's all there. It's going to be a get and a post. Click finish, and it creates a get and post for me right there. I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do accounts, and I'm going to have a path parameter. You specify path parameters with those little curly brackets. And here I'm going to do a get, a put for an update, and delete. All right. So now what you've seen, we've quickly added the resource with the path parameters. Now I'm going to add my models because I'm going to, while I'm editing this API, I'm going to leverage the models. I have a model for account. It's going to be JSON schema. I'm going to copy and paste that, but I can click Add New Model, click Accounts, paste my model, and it does schema validation for you. So if it wasn't valid, it would yell at me. But it's valid, so it works, and that's great. So I've got my models. I can add more models if I wanted to, but in the sake of time, I'm just going to add one. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to go and I'm going to edit this get method. Okay, I'm going to first edit the description. Okay. We can use all sorts of markdown languages too. So we can say, I'm going to put this as a header. I'm going to say retrieves all accounts. And I'm going to put a summary saying retrieves accounts, all accounts. And click finish. All right, so now I've modified that section, so when we appear, you can see that it has already taken effect right here. You can see retrieves all accounts. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some parameters, okay? So I can add all types of parameters. I can have a string, a number, integer. I'm going to do, that's the data type, string, number. I can change the type if it's a query parameter, if it's a header, if it's a body, or if it's form data. This is going to be a query parameter, so I'm going to say last name. And again, I can use, something here. I could do markdown if I wanted to, but I'm just going to say last name. And I think we are good there because it is a string, so we've done that. The next thing I'm going to do is add a response. I can add response codes, okay? So I can pick from a list. So I've got 200. That's a 200 okay, so I'm going to select that. Again, I'm going to description. I can have a description, and I'm going to put some, I'm going to do some more, let's see. Oh, that's update. Here we go. I've got an example of what a response would look like. And we'll put that in there. Again, I can preview. Hold on. I can preview my markdown as well. You can see the example. Okay, that's what it looks like in markdown, and I can finish. Oh, wait, I didn't want to finish. I got so excited about that, I forgot to select the data type. So this is going to return the account's data type model, okay? So I can be very type specific if I would like to. I can also choose here when I say get and retrieve accounts, I can also say, okay, well, I'm only going to accept JSON in, and you're only going to get JSON out. Otherwise, before, if I say the default, my default is I'll accept anything and I can return anything, right? So you can get very specific on that. Or if I want to be able to, change from XML to JSON, I would click both, and then I could automatically take the JSON request and convert it. All right, but I'm going to leave it like that. I'm also quickly going to do my my post, right? My create account. So again, this is going to be, I'm going to do create new account. It's a post, create account. I'm going to finish that. I'm going to add a part. So this is going to be a body. So I'm going to call this body. The description, I'm going to put this description in, again with markdown. Got some markdown in there. Oops, that didn't copy over very well. All right. Put that there. My data type is going to be accounts. That's the model that we put in. And I am going to save. On my query parameter, I could put a default value in there too. Okay, so I've saved that. Again, I want to add a response, and I'm going to say 201 and good. Created. All right, it takes time. We're going to leave it like that. Okay, so now what I've done, I've made my model, I've done some designs, and I am going to save this. All right. So now this is saving it, deploying the proxy to the gateway. I can see my description of what I've done to my API. I can see my implementation. We'll talk about implementations in a minute, come back to that. But what I want to do now is take a look at documents. Now, this is what your consumer is going to see when they come to your API. So you can come here and play. We have an embedded test client in here, so we can come in here and let's invoke this API. We've got a response back from the server. We can inspect, the headers and the pretty, we can pretty it up or view it raw, okay? So that's an invoke. We can test out our query parameters by providing a last name and invoke that, and that'll bring back the record that is the account that is with the last name Olson for me. I can add additional query parameters if I need to, even ones that aren't documented if I wanted to add headers and parameters. Let's go to post. Post, what happens is you can see that from the schema, we can generate values there. We can take a look and copy the code here. Here's a code snippet that I'm going to copy as an example of what you pass the body, and I'm going to actually replace that. All right, so that's my body of my message that I'm going to use, and then I'm going to select that tell it that it is application JSON, and I'm going to invoke. Oh, I must not have parsed that correctly. Pasted that correctly. Transactions. Invoke. Well, it's something to do with the way I quickly made this post, but it's a demo thing. Okay. So if you notice, we didn't put any security on this. This is just, we can access it anonymously, and we can use that API, and we can test things, and we can go back and fix that post if we want to. It's something probably silly that I've done in the example body when I cut and pasted it. But now let's go back, and what we want to do is we want to put an auditing policy on it and an OAuth policy on it so that we use security. So to do that, we're going to go back here to details. We can see our implementations. Right now we have a live implementation. You can, over here, this is where you would export your, clicking on these buttons would export your RAML, WSDL, WADL, whatever you want there. But this live implementation really stands for my production instance. I can create another implementation that represents like a sandbox implementation. Okay, but actually, you know what I want to do before I go to the implementation? I'm going to prepare my API for OAuth so that we can go faster. So click there, click on OAuth details. What I'm going to do is select an OAuth provider. Before this, I quickly configured an OAuth provider to use with Akana to use for this demo. But Akana also provides its own OAuth provider as well. But I wanted to use the Google OAuth. There's a video out there that you can use to help you configure that. It's really like a matter of 2 clicks. We can do detailed scope mappings, but right now I'm going to just say, you know what, we're just going to not support scopes on this particular API. I'm going to save. Now our API is prepared for using OAuth. And we told it that, you know what, if you're going to use OAuth, you're going to use this particular OAuth provider. Now we need to go work on the implementation, right? How this thing is going to run. So when I go to the implementation page, this shows me detailed information about my production implementation, okay? I can edit any of this information. So for example, I can edit the name and the description, but it also shows me what pattern. Right now we are using a simple proxy pattern, okay? And if we wanted to add and manage endpoints, we click on there, we can add more endpoints. Right now we've got it just in HTTP, we can add HTTPS, we can add multiple endpoints right there. All right. We also here specify if we were going to allow that to access anonymously, if we require approval. The next thing down here is the deployment zones, okay? When you create a tenant for tests out of the box, for tests for a trial out of Akana, we give you 2 different deployment zones. We have more deployment zones. If you want to add them, you go to your account and add additional deployment zones to your account. Right now we have Akana West and Akana East, and I can click and configure the host and context path there and deal with that information. But we're not going to do that right now. We're going to look at policies down here. Notice we have no policies applied, okay? So we told the API above that we are going to be using OAuth, right? That's what it should be used, and if you're going to use OAuth, use the Google OAuth providers. Now we need to actually put the policies on to make the gateway actually do that, okay? Again, we have a wealth of different policies. You've got operational, compliance, service level agreements, different policies, but what I'm going to do for this demo is I'm going to attach the detailed auditing policy. And let me go out. These are attached. There we go. I'm going to attach the detailed auditing policies, and I'm going to attach the OAuth policy, and I'm going to save it. Okay. Now, when we go test our API, it is going to, we are going to be required to authenticate using the OAuth. Okay, so let's go back to the implementations. Again, this implementation page is where you would add the other implementations of this particular API. And I'm going to go to documentation again to see it. So now when I click on Get Account, look, the invoke here is grayed out. I can't invoke it until I configure the security. So I click on security. Oh, wait, you know what? I need to be accessed via an app. I don't have an app right now, okay? So let's go back to the overview section, okay? This is what your consumers would see. So now I'm going to pretend I'm an actual consumer of this API. I come and I read it and I decide I want to access it. You would change this page to really advertise your API. I'm going to click on Access. I've already pre-created an app so that we didn't have to go through that for the sake of time. I'll click Add, click Next. I'll select the endpoint. If we had more environments, I would have that, but I only have the live. And if we'd have licenses and so forth, all on that, I would see that too. Now I'm approved, but because this is the production endpoint and I have it configured, I do need to, as a provider, activate that the person can use it. So it's kind of confusing here. I played a dual role. So now let's go back to our account data's documentation. Okay. Again, I'm still gray, so now I need to click on security. I select my app. You can see the app is available there. I might have more than one app, so you'd select which app you would like to use. The next thing I have to do is click configure. Now, because we're using OAuth, we need to be, and we're going to use the Google OAuth, we need to get a token. So I'm going to click get token. And if I am, oh, I was already logged in for my Google account, so I got so that's kind of a bummer. Should have logged out. But it gave me the token because I was already logged in. I click next. If I have to worry about cores, but I don't, not in this case, I would put that there. And now look, the invoke is ready, and I click on it, and I get my response, okay? Now I'm going to invoke it a couple more times here so that we can see some monitoring information about this API. Okay, I'm going to quickly go to the monitor as an API provider. And you can see we have live monitoring of the API. This stuff will go away quickly as soon as it's, or near live monitoring as soon as it refreshes. See, now it's gone. And you can change to, you can monitor your different environments if we had different environments. You can change to the different versions of the API, but we only have version 1. You can see, you know, the usage by operation, top performing APIs, and it's our Swagger. You can see charts if there were errors that occurred, and you can see there, I did that on purpose with the post to make sure that the errors looked cooler for the demo, but I did have a fault there, and we can go into the logs and inspect, probably on the next page here, and expect all of the faults. But I want to go to, just to give you a little bit more interesting and have something that I put traffic through, show you the monitoring of the Swagger. So I have this pet store, the Swagger pet store API, got traffic hitting it. I have it about one per second transaction going through right now. I didn't want to kill the pet store pet store API. I don't think Smart Bear would really like that. But you can see I was pretty, you know, we're getting average latency. I can see I've got 2 apps that are actually subscribed to use it at the moment. I've got a Laura test and a Reese test. I can see operations, and I can drill down. I can also go to charts to take a look. Again, I can filter by apps, I can filter by day, I can filter by environments and number of minutes. So if I want to say, well, what does it look like in the last hour, it will, you know, show me how things appeared in the last hour. I've got the logs. Again, I can drill down and I can see, okay, it took, the total transaction was 150 milliseconds. I can inspect the headers and any additional info about the request going in. I can look any place where there's this little icon, little hourglass thing, I can take a look at, and you can see the response coming back and so forth, so you can get some detailed information. So licenses, I've got a couple of licenses specified. I have a basic read-only license, right, that I have, so that the persons that subscribe to that can only see the particular resources that for read, and then I have a full access license, so this person can see all of the different resources. And then we got a bunch of different analytics here, but I see, I'm sorry, it's been a jam-packed session, but I see that's kind of the gist of the demo I wanted to do today, and we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to answer some questions. All right, Hugh, do you want to help me with the questions, or I saw one earlier.
One question is, interaction layer, can it directly connect to systems like CRM or Salesforce?
Yeah, yes, it can. It can. The interaction layer can directly connect with any of your cloud service providers, like Salesforce. So Salesforce has an API. We've created what's called an API hook for it, meaning that we basically took their API and documented it in a RAML document so that you can easily import it into our platform and begin using it in orchestrations. But actually, I didn't get to show the orchestration capability today, and I would love to be able to do that. So I'll probably do that in a webinar in a month or so. But yes, we can definitely hook into that. I mean, the thing that you need to know there is that, you know, there really should be a service type access to your CRM. So if it produces SOAP, if it produces MQ, if it produces a REST API, we can easily do the orchestration. If it's like a legacy CRM system, that has proprietary hidden APIs where you really need to have an adapter, then you probably want to do that in your traditional integration layer and with a company that specializes in an adapter for your API. Once that adapter, you're using that adapter, you can then expose a SOAP or REST endpoint that could then be used by the integration layer to further, blend it into the capabilities that you want to be able to do. Okay. So the next question I see here is, can you use the very same Swagger definition with the REST API to create APIs in the console? So if you have a Swagger definition, you can import it into the API designer and continue to work on it. You can then export the Swagger definition and use it, outside. But yeah, so if you're talking about creating APIs in the console, yeah, you can import it. You can not have a Swagger design an API, create an API in the console, and export Swagger. When I was showing the two, you had a tab and you could switch over to the Swagger editor. You could actually edit in Swagger, right? If you understand the specification and the JSON, you can do that as well. Okay. Okay. Let me try to find another one that I can quickly answer here in 2 minutes. Okay, the policies that are exposed in the what we saw there, which was our Akana, the Akana Platform UI. Previously, some of you might have seen that the UI looks like a community manager. We have another, depending on how you have your organizational structure set up, and depending on which policies you want to surface to your API provider or API product manager, we have a different UI at this moment that you actually configure your policies with and associate them to different organizations on, which you can then apply. We have the ability to take a policy. Let's say you have a policy that you want to assure that this one organization always applies. You define it in that organization and you attach it at the organization level. That way, any APIs that that particular organization, produces and deploys, this policy always gets attached and enforced. So we have a very robust way to manage your policies and cater to what people can and cannot see. Okay. So with that, there's several other questions, and unfortunately, it is 1 o'clock, and I will try to take your questions and answer them answer them when I can. All right. Thank you so much for joining. Go ahead, create a tenant in the platform, play with it, look at the videos. If you have any questions, feel free to call me out and talk to me. I love talking with customers and helping them. So thank you very much.
The leader has disconnected. The conference will be terminated in 5 minutes.